Good afternoon. Please have your seat as we are about to start our next session. So we are streaming live from ECOSOC, the youth forum at the UN headquarters in New York. This session will feature women leaders of the United Nations. This session will be moderated by Jayasma, who is Secretary General's envoy on youth. And now I will pass the floor to her to introduce our guest. Now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nora. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and for thousands of those who are watching online. Hello. Welcome to this session. I know our UN colleagues don't like to call it this, but I call it the Boss Ladies panel. These are the boss ladies, some of the boss ladies of the UN. And I know most of you all know DSG, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, and some of you knows, those who are very active in the humanitarian sector knows Ursula Mueller, who is the ASG for Humanitarian Affairs. But I'm not very sure if our youth community it knows who this is. This is a very important, one of the most important people in the United Nations. She's our Under Secretary General for Management, Beagle. So we are very privileged to have all three of you joining us here today. So the objective of this session, or why I wanted to call you all together, not necessarily to color coordinate, but to talk a little bit about your experience as women leaders, because ASGs, USGs, when I grew up, I didn't have a lot of people to look up into as role models, and I really had to sort of imagine myself, what would it mean for me to be in a leadership position. So I thought maybe if we share some of our stories, it might inspire other younger girls who are also in the audience today to push down those, kick down those doors and break those glass ceilings, and really inspire them to keep that extra step forward. So without taking much time, I'll start with DSG. DSG, why do you think, I'm going to be very blunt, why do you think gender equality in the workplace is important?
First of all, I think the words that we use sometimes, mask really what we mean. And I think it's really very basically, as bluntly as you put it, is everyone's right to equal participation as human beings, so men and women together. And gender equality, I think over the years we've made the argument for why it's important to us as a right, why it's important to the family, to society, and to the whole. And so I think that it just shouldn't be a question anymore. It really just should be something that we should all be looking to achieve, and when we see it's not there, we move to get it there. And here I think, the SG coming in started that right at the very beginning of his tenure, to say that this is something that is part of what he believes in, and he's going to walk the talk. So that's what we're trying to do. But gender equality, it's one of the most important goals. It's more than goal 5. It's actually what I say is a docking station for all other 16 goals. So no matter what you do with achieving the targets of gender equality, you see it in every single one of those goals. It really does pull them all together.
Of course. Thank you, DSG. And Jan, it's you who is the doer. SG comes in and says, I want to have gender parity in the organization. But it's really you who translates that into action in our day-to-day practices. So when we talk about the context on UN reforms, management reforms, and also about specific challenges that young women especially face in the organization, how do you sort of try to mainstream all that into this reforms package?
Well, I think the most important first thing is to have the vision. If you haven't got the vision, you're not going to get there. So luckily, we have a Secretary General, a Deputy Secretary General, senior management with the vision, and that's the key thing. Next thing, we need to translate that, as you said, into policy framework that will make a difference. And I think for that, we need a number of things. One of them is data, because we have a lot of anecdotes, but anecdotes are not enough. We need to have data, so a big part of our management reform is really knowing what the situation is. Hard data, but also perceptions. And that's why we've done the first staff engagement survey in the UN Secretariat, because a lot of what is thought to be common knowledge is not actually the case. I came from an organization, UNAIDS, where we had done these staff engagement surveys, and we found out, for example, that men, about 75% of men, thought that the organization was doing great on gender equality and having men and women sort of equal in the organization. But a much, much lower percentage, less than 50% of women, thought that was the case. And they were right when we actually looked at the hard numbers. So data is very important and a key part of the reform. And we have, for the first time, an enterprise resource planning tool, Umoja, which is going to help us with that. Another very important thing is to have a policy framework that enables people. So now we have a divide, for example, between our general service and our professionals. You've got to have an exam to move from one to the other. We want to have an open playing field that everybody who has the qualifications and experience needed for positions, they can apply and be selected on merit. That kind of policy. We also need an enabling environment that people feel that this is a place that they want to work. There are a lot of things we need to do about that. Work-life balance is one, but another one is the whole issue of harassment, and particularly sexual harassment. And I think you know the Secretary General very, very strong on that. And then maybe the last thing I would say is that we do need, of course, kind of targeted programs in the area of mentoring and leadership development that are particularly for women. We need them for everyone. But also from my previous experience, I found that if we have programs that are particularly targeted to young women, they do make a difference.
Thank you very much, Anne. So, Ursula, when we usually talk about workplace or gender equality at the workplace, I think we tend to imagine rooms like this, AC rooms, rooms with offices and computers. But most of the people that work with you actually work in the field, in humanitarian emergencies, in grave conflict-affected situations, in disasters. So, how is it for the life of a young woman who is a humanitarian field worker? What are her challenges, and what can we as the UN do to make sure that it is a safe space for her to do her job?
Thank you so much. Great to be with you here this afternoon. And I entirely believe that gender equality is a necessity to find innovative, creative solutions for the challenges of our globe. And being a humanitarian, at heart, my choice was to be a diplomat in my first life, but I also had opportunities, and for women being in humanitarian assistance in the field, OCHA has 30 field offices in places like Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Mali, in really difficult contexts. And when you are young, and I was sent when I was 23 years old, I was sent to Tanzania. I was intellectually curious, but culturally ignorant. I was a white woman from Europe going to Africa. This is the situation our young people also face when they are going to the field with the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance or with other UN humanitarian agencies. So there's a challenge with the security situation. There's this cultural challenge. If you are a woman in a leadership position, you want to be respected and taken as a professional. So, and you can be also very lonely. So these are the challenges of our young women in humanitarian action in the field.
Thank you, Ursula. And DSG, I know you have to leave, so I'm going to ask this question from you. This is a question that I've been having for the longest time. So there is this whole conversation about, can women have it all? Right? Can a woman have a successful family life and also have a successful career at the same time? And there are different arguments about it. I know that you have children, you also have grandchildren, so I'm sure you are in a better position to tell us, young women who are maybe waiting to get married or waiting to have children, if women can have it all.
You can give it a good try. I don't know how many of you listened to the YouTube on the Pepsi Cola lady who said absolutely not. I don't think that you can have it, as we want gender equality, those two things perfectly balanced. One will give. And I think that if you're really looking for a job that you are fulfilled and you're not looking for that leadership position, you can probably make it. I think that for the vast number of women, you can get that balance. Once you're talking about being in a position of leadership, something's got to give. And you need as much support as you make your way there, particularly from your spouse and your children and your family to help you make it, because you do have to take time out from that side. It's just not possible. Most men in leadership have a wife and they've got their home taken care of. Everything's taken care of. We have to do that as well. So I think home gives. But I think that you can do it in creative ways where those in the home appreciate it and don't feel that they lost out because of it, they gained. Certainly in my home, As I came for this job, one of the things we do is sit down and have a family discussion, and I ask for a visa to be away for a few years. And that really helps because I don't have the pressure of feeling like I'm letting them down. They're actually looking to find ways to support me being where I am. So I think it's never a black and white question. It is one about how you make that work. Appreciating the role that you have to take, which is not necessarily for you. What all of us do here is serving humanity. And I think that, family take great pride in that, friends take great pride in it, and finding that space to ask, okay, I need that. I mean, I thought about it the other day after watching that YouTube video. What did I most regret in my career that I feel like I let down my family? And I've got 6 children. And I think what they missed, and I feel that they could have had more impact positively in their life if I hadn't done it. I never had time to read to my children. It really was something that I think I messed up on that big time, because they don't read as much as they should do. And I think that whole culture of reading to your child, whether it's a bedtime story or taking time out to really go through homework with them, it was always that support in the family that helped me to do that. I mean, one of the things I do is that my children are very close to me, but that's because when I got home I was so exhausted I didn't read to them, but I allowed them to play with my hair and fall asleep on me, and so there was a connection. But one of the more concrete things that I think, this gave, and it's something that I regret, and hopefully they'll forgive me for it.
Thank you very much, DSG. Ursula, if I can come back to you, you mentioned that there were a few experiences where you went to the field and faced some challenges, but can you share with us maybe a story where you were specifically challenged because you were a woman?
Yes. When I was sent to Afghanistan in 2001 to open up the German embassy to prepare for troops, peacekeeping force to come to Afghanistan, I must say I was not only challenged, I was inspired by the Afghan women who had endured times of civil war. They had coping mechanisms, and they had great spirits. So this was really not a challenge, it was an inspiration by the local people. And I think this is also something we can draw upon when we are in difficult field situations. And I would also like to mention something: you need to seek help. You need to reach out to people who think can support you. For instance, I had a great opportunity of having mentorship that developed my negotiation skills. Or I was serving under a female ambassador who really taught me how to think out of the box. So I thought this is what helps you, what inspires you. And what's also important is, and it's not that you plan a career. You have to be open for the opportunities. Of course, you have to work hard, but hard work doesn't get women to the top. It is also using the opportunities and being ready, being confident. Just have the courage then to go for it.
Thank you.
I'm going to interrupt you because we're allowed to misbehave as well, right? Yes, she said that she should misbehave as a youth envoy. I think just to remind people to take profit of the journey. Because that's exactly what it is. It's just when Ursula said that, did I have a career path? Did I want to get to this position? I don't remember ever wanting to get to this position. But the journey itself, that every step of the way you put in your very best to bring results out, to make a difference in people's lives. If you do that, the next step is there waiting. You don't have to look for it. Someone will look for you. And I think that journey is really important. And take all the assets of your relationships with you, because it comes full circle. You will get to a position where you will look back 10 years and you'd have met someone that you will pull into your life to use at that time. So the journey, leave any space that you have, any step in your life well, because there'll be a lot of times when you take your leave, just take the opportunity to apologize to all those that you made their life miserable while you were there. Or to thank people for making your life really fulfilled and helping while you did it. You just never know when you're going to come back. So journey, journey, journey.
Thank you, DSG. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Jan, I'll come back to you because Ursula also touched upon the importance of mentorship and serving under other women. So how do you see in an institutional setting that women leaders can can help or can support, can empower younger women in our organization? What are the different methods that we can think of?
Well, I think first of all, the fact that we don't have, or we haven't had up until now, sufficient women in senior positions. It doesn't matter what industry you look at, including our own diplomacy, where both Ursula and I started in our diplomatic services. The fact that we didn't have too many women role models was, I think, a negative factor. The more that you do have women role models, the better it is. If you look even just within our UN system, those organizations that have had powerful women leaders over time, and I look, for example, at UNFPA, that have had some powerful women leaders, some powerful men too, but powerful women, that has made a difference in terms of the number of women in senior positions. So I think it's really important that when women get to positions of responsibility, that they support other women. And I think most do, but maybe sometimes they don't, and I think you should think about that wherever you sit. Try to support other women, because wherever you are, it doesn't matter how junior you might be at a certain point in time, there's someone else who is in a difficult moment at that time, and the more you have solidarity, the better. Just like to pick up, though, on something else that both Ursula and the DSG said, and that's about taking your opportunities and taking your choices, making your choices. Because at every point in your life, there'll become a choice. And to me, there's probably not ever any wrong choice. There's a choice that you make individually at a point in time, and you make it because of usually other things in your life, right? Usually there's a balance of things that you're weighing up. And I think of one that I made very early in my career when I was in the foreign ministry, and they asked me if I would go to do language training in China. And this was at the time when China was just emerging. China was at a totally different place. It had just joined the UN at that time as a member. It's hard to believe that now, that what has been the change of China in a generation. And so that was one choice I had. The other choice I had was to go to New York to the mission. And it was a very hard choice. But in the end, I decided to come to New York because I felt like I would like multilateral work. And that I did. And I found out a lot of things happened to me through that. The love of multilateralism. I also met my husband. I mean, a lot of other things happened to me. I met people then when I was very, very young, who later on have become the president of their country, or have become a leader in a non-governmental organization, or who have done different types of things in the private sector. So those networks you make are really important. And that's the last point I'd say. What the DSG said is never leave a place in a bad way. Even if you are somewhere where things are not going so well, and you think, I'm going to get out of here. And you're probably right. If your gut tells you it's not right, it's probably right. But try to do it in the best possible way, because you never know. And it's really amazing how the circles come around. You never know. The DSG's job, when she was growing up, and until very recently, it didn't exist. Ursula's job, it didn't exist. My job existed, but it was very different. So none of us probably thought a few years ago we would be sitting here. I would say, finally, I come from New Zealand. We have just got, some of you might have read about it, just very recently, a 37-year-old woman has become our Prime Minister. She became the leader of her party 7 weeks before the election, most unexpectedly. She didn't expect it at all. She'd only become the deputy leader of the party earlier that same year. She became the leader. She fought an election against a governing party that was expected to win quite easily, and she became the Prime Minister. Now, she is pregnant. Amazing, right? She's pregnant. She is only the second serving leader who will give birth during the other one being Benazir Bhutto, which shows you we've still got far to go, but we're getting there.
Of course, yes. When you were talking, I remembered something that a young person told me when I was in Colombia. I was meeting a group of young women, and one of these young girls told me that they once went to Silicon Valley, and they went to one of the biggest tech companies in the world. They went to meet their first female vice president of this certain company. And the young lady told me when they went into that room, what they expected was that this vice president would share her story, share her challenges, and inspire the other young women to take a career in technology, in IT. But she said the vice president ended up talking about the company And she said it wasn't the first time, that it has happened to her many times when she looks up to some of the women in leadership for inspiration. We are very bad at telling our stories. I think we take some kind of guilt to tell our story and not to put ourselves first. But I just want to hear from you, what do you think about it? Is it important to tell our journey, our story to other young women?
Absolutely, and because we all can make a difference. We need to work hard, and I also encourage you to learn languages. You can make a choice. You can say, I stay in my country, in my comfort zone, or I want to work in international context and explore different cultures, meet interesting people. If I look back to my career, I met incredible people that inspired and enriched my life. And I also want to spend a moment on role models. I never thought I would be a role model until someone said, you're a role model. It is, you learn from a person's values, they stand for, the character, the approach to life, if you believe in yourself, never give up. Take the opportunities, and if the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I really am so grateful for all the opportunities I was given. And it also takes someone to tell you, go for it. I had 2 opportunities, and when I ended up in a job, I would not have thought of being in this job or applying for this job. It was someone else who said, you would be great at this. So I really hope we can inspire and encourage each other. It needs courage to tell yourself, well, yeah, I have a lot of talents and maybe I need to improve here or there, but really have the confidence and go for it. And it helps if others encourage you to do so.
Just to add on that, I absolutely agree with Ursula. It's really important to take some risks. It's also very important to go beyond where you think is your comfort zone, because quite honestly, so often I hear from young women, oh, here is such and such a position, but it has 6 requirements and I only have 5. Well, let me tell you that most men, if they had 2, they would be applying. So you have to think also, how do you leverage up other skills you have? Maybe you don't have them exactly as they're written, but you probably have them from other areas of your life or other experiences that you have. So see how you can mold yourself in different ways. And I would say also, and I think that most of us who have come into positions of high responsibility now have come across sectors, have done different things. We haven't just started off with a life plan, or even if we had one, it didn't last that long. We went in different ways. And if you look now at the kind of world we have, where it doesn't matter what the type of issue is, it's a political issue, a humanitarian issue, a rights issue, a development issue, it's got all the other parts are interlinked. Everything is cross-disciplinary. Everything is cross-programmatic. So the more that you can find yourself being multi-skilled, working across disciplines, working across functions, working across locations, working across cultures, I think the more that you will be very, very valuable in the workforce of the future.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe before we wrap up, if I can ask you one final question. If you could, if there's a time machine, and if you could go back in time, and if you could give one advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be, Jan?
Probably that there's no wrong choice. That at a certain point in time, I remember that I was there and I was studying university and I was thinking, will I take this course or that course? And if I take this course, maybe I will go here. And if I don't take that one, it will be the end. In fact, ultimately, you'll be so many different times in your life that you will come onto crossroads and you may go one way or the other. So basically, come to the choices, but take them. Don't run away from the choices. And sometimes take a choice that's maybe a little bit off the beaten track. Don't always go the way that you think is the way that everyone expects you, or might have been your trajectory up to now. Take a risk. Go into something a little bit different. Even if then afterwards you come back to maybe your specialty or whatever, still take that risk, because I think that increasingly as we move forward, the people that are going to be the most valued in our societies are people that are able really to work across cultures, that are people are able to understand other ways of thinking, people that are able to work in teams, people that have got balanced judgment, people that have the kind of competencies and values, I think Ursula said that before, values that are going to make the difference. So take some risks.
Ursula, how about you?
Well, I would say you can make a difference. Be open and see the opportunities that are presented to yourself. Sometimes we don't see it. And never give up. And don't be shy to ask for support. Yes. And have confidence in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I have to also make a confession here. This is not something I wanted to say, but I think I should say it. A few weeks after I was appointed as the Secretary General Envoy on Youth, my uncle sent me a few photographs. It was an essay that my cousin wrote. She's in 5th grade. She was asked to write about her role model in school, and my cousin ended up writing about me. I got furious. I called my uncle back and I asked him, like, why has she written about me? That means her world is really small. When I was in 5th grade, I read about Kofi Annan, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi. I wrote about them as my role models. I said, you should buy Dia some more books. Like, you should let her read. And then he told me, the world has changed, and also the fact that she looks up to you as her role model means that you inspire her and you're more real to her than those stories you read in a book. So I think I will also take a lesson from that and from this conversation to empower and inspire more young women in my life and those who are not in my life but are in this world. There are 65 million girls who are out of school as we speak. There are about 400 million people who do not have access to healthcare. So as women in leadership, as women who have got the right opportunities at the right time, I think we also have a responsibility to speak on behalf of the women who did not have the same opportunities that we had, and to also empower them, uphold them, and support them in every way we can. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.